Hey y'all, welcome back to the Takeoff. This is your host Max Henry, and on this week's episode, we have none other than Giles Campbell Longley. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Giles from way back in the day through Visive Productions when he was really helping to kind of form the visual language of parkour in the early, or I guess late noughts and early 2010s, to his work with Jesse and Corey, helping to film their documentaries for Tempest, working to help film Red Bull Art of Motion, eventually working on RCA and being really formative in the production of Star Wars Roof Culture Asia, to creating Modus Projects and Soul Destroyer and all the other iconic films via Modus Projects, and now to working behind the scenes with Store, doing, as he describes it, basically everything other than appearing on camera. And for once, not always behind the camera, which is probably a nice change for him. So I've known Giles, oh my goodness, again, probably 12 years. And this one is our longest episode yet. I think it's a little bit more of a chat than I tend to do in these. And for me, at least, it was because it was just really great to get to sit down and pick his brain. One thing I've always respected about Giles is he he's one of the few people in the sport that really seems to hone in on that last 10% of getting something done, whether that is figuring out how to get, better products and better delivery at the Modus projects, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's video editing, all of those things that he does. He's really, really good at just diving into the last 10% and putting the best effort there that he can. And for me personally, that's always been a struggle. And I think a lot of other parkour athletes have the same experience that I do, which is that we love to get a project started and sometimes struggle to finish it in the best way possible. So in this episode, we dig into everything that Giles is doing with Store, some of the lessons that he learned from the Modus project and Visive and all of his previous endeavors, and how he is bringing that energy into Store to try and help keep them as successful as possible, and where he sees parkour's culture and infrastructure and industry going in the future. It does get pretty nerdy, so feel free to skip around to the chapters. I personally always listen to podcasts when I'm running or biking or driving or something, so I'm not a big skip around person. But if you're just kind of looking for good sound bites, and there are a ton of those in here, some really great insights, especially if you are in sort of content or parkour business, or like a gym owner, and you're listening to this, I think there's going to be some really great takeaways. But yeah, if it starts to get a little bit more in the weeds than you're ready for, feel free to skip ahead 4 or 5 minutes. We do go pretty deep into some stuff like e-commerce and, wholesale shipping, and answering questions like, why don't more gyms have, a bunch of parkour shirts from Store on sale in their lobbies? So give it a listen. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. And without further ado, let's let the man talk. Giles, welcome to the Modus podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's weird.
And
Statements like that feel like a lifetime ago. Like
I remember when I came over, and it feels like a lifetime ago. Before kids. I don't even know if
Yeah,
Christina
I
were
think
married.
that is the thing. Is like kids are this fucking, I don't know what you'd call it, thing in
It's a
life.
life event that is
It's
actually
before and after kids. Yeah.
Yeah, it is the only one I've experienced that feels that binary. I think people say that about a lot of things, graduating college, or, oh, you're going to get a career,
Yeah,
you're going to
no.
get married. And all of those things are very gradual. And when you have a kid, it is literally your life is
Yeah.
inexplicably different that day.
Yeah. Like you can look at like the pandemic as a chunk of time that felt weird, like trippy in
Mhm.
terms of like to think back on. But it's like the second that baby's out, it's like complete change. So anyway,
Yeah,
I'm sure
and we
this
get
is
a
what
we
you
get
wanted
a
to
nine and a
start with.
half to 10 month delay too, because for the partner who has
Yeah.
to carry the kid, their
Yeah,
their
exactly.
life their life change starts significantly earlier than ours.
Yeah.
But well, welcome to the Takeoff podcast, and it's
Thank you
good to
very
be
much.
here, flipping the table. I feel like I get to be on the other side of the
I'm out of
mic
touch. I'm
now.
severely out of touch. I'm quite like, yeah, I sent that gif earlier being like, I'm ready. I'm not ready.
It's okay. Well, I'll start you with an easy one. Why do none of Storer's clothes fit me? They're all
Do
like,
they
whose
not?
legs are so short? Dude, every time I get
Oh, wait.
pants,
What have you just, what are you talking about? Hardware cargos?
everything is a weird fit. I blame the British. You guys are too boxy.
We
You're
are
too
quite boxy.
boxy.
If you're
No,
talking hardware
I love.
cargos, we literally have just redone them with a better leg fit because the length of them
Oh,
was
really?
was dodgy. Yeah, yeah.
I put
So
the
that's
legs on. That is one of them. The sweats also were didn't really fit me lengthwise,
no,
but
they were
I
also a
also buy
complete
them.
factory screw up. So
Oh, well, if anybody's listening and they're on the fence, I still buy everything anyway.
oh no, the
And
sweats
then
have
if
gone
it
now.
doesn't fit
We've so
me, I was gonna say if it doesn't fit me, it just goes to Christine. Like she rocked the cargos,
yeah.
and I was very jealous. Her fit was immaculate,
Oh
and
really? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, I looked like I was like back in freshman year of college trying to fit in with all the cool scene kids and just could not wear them in good conscience.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, I will continue to purchase, but yeah, I was that and then the boxy fit in general. I feel like it's an interesting parkour fashion has taken an interesting turn where like many things in parkour culture, I mentioned this to Alec and David on the Commons episode.
Yeah.
Join or Die was the first event where I saw the event recap and I'm like, I'm glad I'm not there. And not in a sense of this event doesn't look fun, but just this event does not look fun
This
for me, but it
yeah,
looks
yeah.
really fun for the people who are there and I'm totally okay that I'm not the audience for that. And I feel like
Yeah.
I've recently come to that realization with a lot of parkour clothing where I
It's
look
called
at
being
it.
in your 30s.
Dude, yeah, no, it is. So how do you I was gonna ask you because you're obviously have been getting involved in store, etc. How do you balance being a mid 30s man drinking peppermint tea with designing things for people who are not in your age demographic?
Um I think at the end of the day, like there's we can probably go into this more at some point depending on when you want to go into all the story stuff, but I'm kind of I've created a little bit of separation in terms of how much not even I'm involved in the development of the clothing because I'm still heavily involved with the guys, but like we've brought in a, like we're working with partners now who are basically who can actually handle the technicalities of that to basically to elevate the product quality because me emailing factories and going back and forth on it's just there's so much complexity to actually getting a good product out there if you don't know what you're doing, and it's like it's one of those things where I just had to look at it and be like, this isn't we need people who know their shit to be doing this for us and we pay them as opposed to us with a tape measure in the office looking at seam lengths on groins and stuff, because that's how these issues can happen. And also like the communication barriers between, like, let's say a Chinese factory and how you can get something across, is tough.
Yeah.
But when it comes to design, I mean, it's pretty much just what the guys want to wear is what we make. So it I guess that kind of dictates it. Like the boxy fit is, yeah, maybe it's just slightly more of a British thing. Like it's slightly, it's slightly kind of, I don't, we're not nearly as boxy as like your crop t-shirt of some, some parkour athletes who are, belly button showing kind of thing. If anything, actually, what we've spent a lot of time developing, Bloggy actually kind of put the sort of foundation in place for like the hoodies and crew necks. The one I'm wearing actually now, we've
Is
got
that
these
the
like
standard, the newer ones?
yeah, so it's just the standards. They're
Yeah.
just like really fucking nice quality like stuff
Hmm.
that then will now become basically our blanks moving forward. But yeah, we're trying to put more of a focus on like function and actual like performance of the piece, but also still aligning with that kind of on not on trend, but the aesthetic that
Hmm.
sort of people want to wear. So it's like, how do you take a boxy item but make sure that actually when you're training it's not just flying up under your armpits, because it's actually like some people, if you shop like a luxury streetwear brand in the UK and buy like a boxy hoodie, it's so fucking cropped, like it's mad. And it's like we don't want that because it doesn't actually function how a hoodie should function. So it's marrying the two. But yeah,
I
really,
like that
it's
hoodie doesn't look like it has strings. Does it have strings?
no.
The hoodie that
Like
you're wearing?
that
Thank
that
God.
actually I had a
Oh my
conversation with Benj
gosh.
about this because we were talking about what we liked the most the other day, and he was saying, oh, I actually kind of still prefer some of the hoodies with strings because he's in Brighton and he's like on his bike and it's so windy down there, he'll put it up and he'll crank it up tight, whereas I hate a
Just
hoodie
get a
string.
balaclava, dude. Yeah, just
Yeah,
get a
yeah, yeah,
balaclava.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, no,
Um,
the hoodie string era of parkour clothing was an era where I dropped way too much money consistently on sweatshirts that I never
to
wore
then,
because the second I did, I get whacked in the eye
oh,
by
I
a
just
hard
pulled them
piece of
out.
plastic. Yeah,
Yeah, I just
that's the
cut
smarter
them
way
and
to
pull
do
it
it.
out like all the time. It's just yeah, it's inconvenient. So I'm glad
Well, I
that
did.
like I don't know. Did you ever see the trend in the US where it was massive in the UK where people actually Travis, if Travis ever listens or watches to this, he was guilty of this. But there was a thing where people would it would be a white hoodie string and they'd tie it into a nice neat little bow. It'd be like a black hoodie
Oh,
with a white, and I hated it. It looked so like I don't know, just a personal like bugbear. But I thought it looked so stupid. So I'm glad that didn't settle too hard in parkour. So
no, I don't think I ever saw that one. Well, I just wanted to start with something goofy because I find you to me have been
goofy.
I almost said an anchor. No, well, I feel like you've been a landmark figure kind of culturally because you have had your fingers in so many different things. I mean that in the least gross way possible.
But
I
also
mean
it's
the
fine. You can do the gross one.
like from was it Jump Britain that you were in as like a
I
12-year-old
was
kid?
Jump London was what I first saw.
Jump
So
London and
to the
then
point where when the call out thing for Jump Britain came out, where they wanted people to like be in that like final London scene where everyone runs up to the camera, and also the
yeah.
Aerith Gym scene. I was like one of the first people who emailed in because they put a link on the UF message board, and then like got this response, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be in it, and then they were like, sorry, you're too young, like you need to be this age or whatever. I was like, fuck. So, but
I
yeah,
remembered that story and I was like looking for you in Jump Britain and I couldn't remember if you were actually in it and I didn't see you.
no,
That
I
makes me
wish.
I understand now. Yeah, but I mean literally like that is the earliest essentially the earliest time anybody in the UK got into it. Obviously all the way through Visive, which I do want to ask you about, to Modus, to now working with Storer. I think you have gotten to see the trends
Mm.
and the forces that have kind of shaped parkour culture over the last 22 plus years. So while, I think it's funny to me to
God,
be
that is a
like, oh,
depressing amount of
yeah.
time.
For some people depressing, I think it's
Not
I was
depressing,
going to
just
say
kind of shocking.
inspiring.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Not for my timeline in parkour. Just like it's mad that it's been that long.
I
Like
know.
in some ways, it
And
feels like I've barely done anything. In other ways, it feels like I've done so much. Like I guess it's just who you compare yourself to. So
you've been in the scene longer than Furky's been alive. Look what he's done. So
yeah, very true. Yeah, very very true. And I still can't congainer. So
I still can't call Gainer. Your head probably thanks you.
yeah,
I when I went to I was looking at some of the USPK national stuff and going through the roster and thinking, okay, how many of these competitors have been alive for less time than I have been training parkour? And it was a
yeah.
significant majority. And I
God,
still
that's
can't
mad.
triple full or con gainer either. So,
No, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
thankfully the impact that you can have on the development of a sport is not inherently linked to how good you are at all your technical skills. Although I did love your 20-year video that you dropped 2 years ago.
I was happy with that, and I wish it was considerably better. I had this list of things I wanted to do for that, and it never happened. And I had a list I wanted to do when I turned 30, never happened. So I just scrambled to make
What's the next
something.
list that's not going to happen? Do you have any other
Probably
ones?
just to actually do parkour. I'm incredibly out of touch. It's embarrassing. So it's like, how can you be so like in the weeds with something yet still also feel so like separate from the actual movement itself? Is the position I'm currently in. Um, so, but that's just yeah, a personal thing, I guess. But it is. You were just saying about it being kind of. I can't remember if you used the word impactful or like intertwined with the development
Hmm.
of something. It's weird. Like I think so much of that was unintentional, and I was just following kind of what I. No, I was following what made me happy and what kept me within the sport. All I really cared about was staying like in there and doing something that had some kind of like impact in a sense of just like just feeling involved, if you know what I mean. And I guess it kind of just compounded and meant that over the time it's like, oh, who's got a good repertoire of stuff that they've done within the sport that isn't athletic. And I guess I kind of just compounded up the list of like, oh, I've done this, this, and this. I've worked with this person, and it was this desperate desire to just stay moving. I guess like stay involved despite not being an athlete.
Yeah. Do
So
you still do you like want, this is maybe too deep a question for 10 minutes into the podcast. Do you want to do parkour more, or do you feel like you're at a good spot with your sort of life balance right now?
uh definitely not in a good spot in my life balance in the sense that I would love to be more connected to just movement. Like the last couple of years, I've really just two kids, sort of intense career, not being very kind on myself in terms of making space for making space for me in terms of health and fitness and things, and more just like, oh, I'm either with the kids or I'm working. I wish I had, a Keelan or someone 5 minutes down the road who was knocking on my door to be like, hey, let's go out and just move, not, try and do anything big. I love, just the feeling I get from coming back from a day when I have actually done some parkour. Even it used to be like I'd beat myself up if I couldn't get over a mental block, and now I've had to come to terms with, like a big concrete or something. Now I've kind of had to come
Mhm.
to terms with the fact that, unless I consistently train some of these more, like things at scale or whatever, um, I'm not going to be able to sustain that. There are things that occasionally, I used to happen a lot more, but kind of beat myself up over, like challenges in London that I've never done, and likely now probably will never do, because it's like, I could if I devoted all my time to it. I'm still young. I'm still physically able. I could go and do some of these things, but it's like realistically, some of these challenges I'm probably never going to tick off. So that there's a little portion of my brain that thinks that, but actually what I now just really like is when I feel like I've just put together like nice flowy lines that have challenged me a little bit, and I feel, a little bit of a sweat and a little bit of a sort of, if it's like good exercise for the body and the brain, and like good
Mhm.
connection with people, and like little mental barriers to break through and things. Um, so yeah, I can't even remember what the question was, but
No, I'd asked if you wanted to do parkour because I think that something that a lot of people might resonate with, that I get a lot when I talk to friends who are either still in the community, but they're taking on maybe a more administrative role, or they're adjacent to parkour because they had kids or they have a career and they start to do, I mean, Christine is a great example. There often to me is this expectation that everybody who at any point in the past did parkour
is like
needs to still
longing.
want to do it.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly. And I think I
yeah,
always like to ask the question because I'm like, do you actually want to train? Because I'll use Christine as an example. She's been doing CrossFit and killing it for the last year and a half, 2 years. And that's her daily thing because it fits into her schedule
yeah,
much more easily than going to try and do an open gym session at 9 p.m. at Apex when we've got a
yeah,
kid
yeah,
and work and all these other things. So, like, that's the thing she can do every day. So, she's been doing that and she still likes to get out and train. But her relationship with it is more, I want to stretch my body, be in my movement somehow and challenge myself somehow. And if that happens to be through parkour, that's great. If it happens to be through something else that I enjoy doing, that's also great.
yeah.
And I
I
like to articulate that because I do feel like there's so many people who are like, I want to do parkour. And then you really talk to them and like, I don't think you do. And that's totally fine.
yeah,
But
no,
I was
like
curious where you were at on that spectrum.
it's definitely lower on the list than other forms of movement that I know will give me a sense of fulfillment physically.
Mhm.
If I want to just feel like I've done something good for my body, it's gonna be the go for a run or lift or whatever. But like, I think there's the longing to just, I don't know, like play. I think in that kind of flowy technical thing that I know whenever I do it, I'm like, why do I not do this more? And like,
Yeah.
so I still have that itch. Um, but yeah, I'm not hunting for big scary shit.
Yeah.
So
No. I had a great session recently. We were doing a family trip to Germany to see some of Christine's family, and we stopped off in Prague afterwards for New Year's. And I got to go to the In Motion gym
yeah,
and train with Mikesh and Venda and the gym owner Daniel there. And yeah, Christine was pretty sleepy and getting over a cold, so she stayed home with Margot. I just trained for 2 hours. And I think that the ability that parkour has to let you connect the creative side of yourself with the physical side of yourself,
Mm,
when you can tap into that, there is something that is just so inherently fulfilling about it. Because I've
yeah,
been
yeah.
doing more running, as like I got a treadmill, because as you know, when you're a parent, sometimes you're like, okay, I've got an hour, my kid's napping, I need to clean the house, do these other things, get some work stuff done. I have 8 minutes to work up a sweat. I'm going to run a mile as fast as I can. And that's
Like,
maybe the only physical thing you get to do that day.
yeah,
And taking 2 hours for myself at the gym, I remember the feeling, taking the train back after that and just thinking, wow, I really need to try and give myself more time and space to have that experience of connection, because the first 20 or 30 minutes, like, oh, I'm kind of rusty, don't feel as technical as I want to. And then by the end of the session,
I love
I
it
was
how
just
this
so
is coming
happy
from
with what
somebody.
I'd come up with.
This is
Yeah.
coming from somebody who has a setup in their back garden. Like,
Yes. And I do get to train. I mean, in the winter, it's snowed in quite a bit, and I still
yeah,
do get to train many days. Let's say I get to do parkour probably 3 or 4 days a week, but a lot of times, even if it is in the yard, it's 30 minutes between work
yeah,
calls or
yeah,
something like that. And that's just kind of the reality of life and work schedules. And I
yeah.
think one thing that is nice to acknowledge is how that relationship can change. For me, and obviously you as well, like we're both still very in the scene. And I see somebody like a Benj who is
Mm,
doing a project like Cavemen and constantly scouting and on rooftops, like, oh my gosh, I would love to be able to maintain my skill set that sharply and
yeah, yeah,
have, the time and community and space to go out and do something at that level 4 or 5 times a week and give myself 2 or 3 hours to session, but it doesn't always happen. Um,
no, yeah. I think
Wanted to hit you with the deep questions right off the bat.
it's just, yeah, it's life. It's you just have to, yeah, it's just balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that, given given the ideal world, all the money in the world, you would design every aspect of your life to, like, I don't know, like where I live when I walk into the door, I'm always, there's loads of nice houses around. There's like houses with big like stables and things. There's this house I walk past in particular, and it has like a whole, lovely house, loads of land, has a stable, has like a area for like training horses in equestrian stuff, and it's like a big flat area. And I always think like if I had that money, I would have a home gym because I used to have a spin bike and I used to
Hmm.
love that for like your cardio. And I'd have, when we had the weight bench at the office with Motus, and it was like amazing, the fitness. I would love to have a lower barrier to entry in terms of just being able to do like just functional fitness at home. Um, and then, but I look at like one of those like flat paddocks, and I know I would still, even today, if I had all the money, I would still invest in like a sick setup that like would be good enough that you could invite like 20 people over and have a massive session and camp for the weekend and things. And it's like I know the actual desire to be connected to the actual movement itself is still very much ingrained in me, as much as I pretty much turn down so many opportunities to go and train when I'm like at the office and people are like, oh, we're going out for a bit, do you want to come? And I'm like, no, I need to work. Like, and I'm like 20 meters away from a spot in Brighton or something. So, but yeah,
That's the reality. I think that
yeah,
that's the balance of it. One thing that has always stuck with me that I learned at a very young age in parkour is that balance is a dynamic process. It's not
mm,
a state that you achieve and then
it's the
statically
whole,
maintain.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. It's the back and forth. And yeah, no, I think that's beautiful and it's good to talk about it. And yeah, I was curious to see where you were at in that spectrum. But let's take a step back and a deep breath from that, because I did want to ask you a little bit about where you have come from. I think you'd said impactful. I think a word that, as I've thought more as we're chatting, resonant is how I've always thought of all of your work in the community. I think it not only reflects what's been happening in the community, but has also pushed it forward. So going back to the Visive days, I think about the Brighton parkour short
Yep.
film, heavyweights. Was there did Okay, I was looking for this video and I couldn't find it. It was called something like chocolate Danish pastries and
Chocolate hookers and
hookers,
Danish
or
pastries. Yeah,
yes, that
chocolate
was
hookers
one
and
of
Danish pastries.
my
It got
favorite
taken off YouTube.
videos.
Yeah, I think it should be on Vimeo, but I don't even know if like the Visive Vimeo is. I don't know if Vimeo deletes
Okay,
all it. I don't know,
I'll
but
have to
I
look.
remember it got taken off YouTube because of music or something, and then it stayed on the Vimeo. So, yeah, that
Okay.
was road tripping to Denmark with Callum and Potsy, and we like a drive that should take probably like 9 hours or something. We somehow I think it took us like almost 24 because we went to Bruges and we did all this shit, and then we got there and it was like our first experience with Jacob Jensen and everything that he was a character, and this setup that wasn't finished, so we end up painting it, and just loads of fun drama. So but that was a
Yeah,
good one.
that's a great video. Do you have a favorite video of yours from that era?
Oh, like the obvious answer would probably be like the Life is Fun series, just because it obviously sums up so many of those different eras, and probably is the easiest one to like. I haven't. There was a period a few years ago, maybe up until a few years ago, that I used to, the occasional evening, a couple of times a year, I'd kind of deep dive and go and watch a load of old things. I haven't done that in a while, thinking about it. But they all, they're all special, and they all bring back. Some of them I fucking hate
Mm-hmm.
because it's an edit that you've worked on and you hate it by the time you finish with it. But
Yeah.
especially there's like editing transitions or song choices. You're like, what was I thinking? But it was a very like the term golden age or golden era of like parkour definitely gets thrown around a bit. But I think there's times back then that felt like it was a smaller, more naive community, just full of just people just doing parkour and fucking around, and it was a fun thing to be involved in. So
It
yeah.
felt very open-ended. I think all the
Mm.
content, then there was this sort of like, I think part of that also is just generally the 2010s were a much less stressful era culturally and politically.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
late noughts than right now. It's a
yeah.
little bit harder to be like wanderlust. Let's go all over the world
Well, I
when you
think
look and
you
everything's on
weren't as
fire.
aware of tensions and everything going on in the world. Is like social media has just brought so much of that up to
It
the
was the
front of your
Obama years
view.
for us, dude. We were fucking living our best lives.
You,
We
yeah,
were
yeah,
like
yeah,
hope, hope, and
yeah.
now
Very
it's
true.
just pure despair
Yeah,
in the Western Hemisphere for most people. But
yeah.
uh, no, I feel like there was this open-ended energy, and you guys captured it really well. And I remember, yeah, all of those videos for me were very formative. The Brighton parkour one, I think, was also the first that felt like a community sourced short film or doc style
Interesting.
production,
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
there had been a few that were more formal back then. Like I remember a couple, like there's a Danish film called My Playground in 2007.
Yeah.
There's another short film from the Japanese community back then. But I remember the Brighton Parkour one, and it felt like this is the voice of the community and sort of this like essence of parkour culture, but in a different way. And
Mm.
I mean, maybe not obviously to everybody who's listening, but what was what motivates me often with the work in Point A is kind of, seeing how projects like that and the ones that I think subsequently you built on through things like Soul Destroyer um, became a new way to communicate parkour media to people. So I guess
Yeah,
my
yeah.
question here in this transition is, what do you feel like changed for you in the media process and sort of in the culture of the sport, and how you wanted to share things from the Visive era, where it felt more to me like you were maybe an outside observer, to Modus, where it obviously started feeling a little bit more structured and purposeful?
I think probably just the development of me, my character, and kind of where I wanted to be in the community. I would say the shift into Motus and those years were the most like um they were the most strategic and intense uh not intense, intentional in terms of me, wanting to try and visibly be like a voice, be involved, further things, do things that I thought, could, not take the sport forward into, oh, if I start a podcast, if I do this, it's gonna like, suddenly change things, but just add, like,
It
be
does,
additive.
100%.
But yeah, just kind of be additive. Sorry, my beautiful dog is just yawning in the background.
Hi, Darwin.
He looks so sleepy. Yeah, be additive to the sport, as opposed to, I guess, yeah, when it was Visive, it was, I mean, I was much more just behind the camera, just capturing things and, doing a Life is Fun, trying to copy Sasha by, his amazing cinematic like montage edits. It was like, well, I've got loads of footage, I can do that. And then I think, yeah, going from, it was really like the years of the Off the Edge tours, stuff like that, that I think probably challenged me the most in terms of just not necessarily maturing, because I was probably still immature as fuck, but like, probably still am. But in terms of, I remember lots of people being like, after I came back from like basically a year of constant travel with Corey and Jesse, being like, you've changed. And I think I became a lot more purposeful and realized that what the 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 attention I'd kind of built for myself, and the, not attention, the justification in my work, the fact that I was now starting to be recognized as somebody who could, go and shoot these big projects and be in, most big
Hmm.
commercial projects or big teams were kind of picking up the phone to like me and Jamie back then and being like, hey, can you come and, shoot Storm Barcelona? Can you come and do this? Obviously, very, very lucky, because most of the stuff that was happening was basically happening in England and Europe, and then, LA with Corey and Jesse. It felt like they were the most kind of like forward in those, the bigger projects. So I kind of built a name for myself, and then as I transitioned into Motus, was like, well, I don't need to put someone else in front of this. Like, I can kind of be in front of this. It wasn't immediate though. Like, initially I wanted to do Motus as an anonymous thing. And then obviously I brought the guys on to kind of help bolster the, well, there
Hmm.
needs to be some actual parkour people involved in this. But as that period went on, and I guess I became a little bit more of like a, you know, leading the way for that, being more of a shepherding them around and taking them to events, and realizing that I kind of was a bit more, I don't know, I grew into it, I guess.
Yeah. You really
Sorry, I'm
started
not
your
very,
parenting career with teenagers. That's hard. You went with like 8
it's,
teenage
yeah.
boys before anything else.
Yeah, yeah. And then I have two daughters, so I'm just, everything I learned gone. If anything,
Out the window.
it just makes me want my daughters to never leave the house, because I know how disgusting teenage boys are. So having been one, and then also spent way too much time with them. So
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. No, I think purposeful is a good way to summarize how Modus felt. And what I really liked also is how open you were about the, I don't want to say lack, but I think that many of us who started parkour early benefited from the fact that there's basically no competition and a very interested market for our content. And I feel like you were
Mm,
the first person to go, what if we actually thought about how we communicate things to the outside world? Like, what if we actually, I don't know, spent a couple of weeks thinking about email marketing, or, how to put together social media posts to reach people outside of the 800 active users in the North American and European parkour
that's
community who
weird.
buy all of our products.
It's interesting. Oh, in that sense, I guess. Yeah, it's interesting that you sort of pick up on stuff like that, because I wouldn't have even thought back
Well, I
then
think
it was,
you made a lot of videos, maybe not a lot, but I do think that you did your video series where you kind of talked a little bit about that. I feel like you were pretty open about,
put it live and then
uh,
immediately took it down because I was ashamed
yeah.
of. I suddenly realized I was being one of those people who was like, here's how to run a business. Yeah, my business was just struggling constantly.
Well,
like
yeah,
if some,
you have to build the rig that you keep your business afloat is obviously
yeah,
that you
yeah,
sell the how to run your
you sell the
business
course, exactly. Yeah,
course. This
yeah,
is the influencer playbook in a nutshell.
exactly. But I I think I've always tried to be very aware of my shortcomings in kind of whatever I get into. And I think I'm also, whether that's budget constraints or not knowing how to even find, to outsource something if I need something done. It's like, okay, I guess I'll. And I think there's a lot of this that still exists within my sort of roles at Stora, is like, I guess I'll kind of have a crack at that and then, learn how to do it and try my best, because I think it is super, super valuable in kind of anything in life to like know enough to be dangerous before you bring someone else in to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe aside from, the wiring in your house or something, although I'm sure some people would like to give that a shot. But you get what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like
You need to learn enough to ask the right questions when a professional
yeah,
does
and
come
to
on, or to
know
articulate what
when
you
that
want.
person exactly, and to know when that person's potentially, either as clueless as you or overcharging you or whatever. So and I think along the way you you pick up interests and sort of experience and enjoyment out of stuff that maybe you wouldn't have thought. Like email marketing, for example, very dull on the face of it when you think about it. One of the highest converting channels for like any brand.
Mm-hmm.
Like people are like, oh, email's dead. It's like email is the thing that, everyone still opens their emails. Like, maybe not all your spam, but like everyone has an email address. And so it's when you then set up a brand, one of the most reliable ways to communicate is that. And there's just a lot of intricacy that can go into it, down to the absolute fine tooth stuff. But you can, once, like I said, learn enough to be dangerous to then just not get ahead of other people, but just get up to scratch and sort of be doing enough to be making a difference in
Mm-hmm.
something of that field. So,
Yeah. So what do you do for Store now?
um,
What don't you do for Store now?
well, I
Other
feel
than
like I'm a
appear
bit of a,
in weekly
I'm a bit,
videos.
yeah, which they want to do a Star versus staff video, and it's now becoming a bit,
Oh,
they
please.
keep mentioning it, and
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I've got a really bad blister. Like, oh, yeah.
I want just
So,
Store versus Giles video.
but
Just Giles.
I literally, when it almost happened a few weeks ago, and then the day that it was going to be, like, I actually legitimately couldn't make it, and I think someone else couldn't. But I literally, like, called up Keelan and was like, I need you to, like, sub in. Like, because otherwise, I'll give it a crack, but I can't lay down anything those guys can't do. There's nothing I can do that they can't, apart from maybe just take, like, a horrific bail. So, like,
I think you just get really good at switch walking, and
oh,
you will
God.
have to. You can pull it on that. Like they'll either embarrass themselves trying, or they won't be able to do it. It's a lose lose,
True.
or a win
Yeah,
win
yeah,
for
very
you.
true.
So
Very true.
yeah, I have a
Um,
couple of people you can talk to in the Colorado community that will hook you up with some new gen movements.
It's all right. I've angered them years ago. They won't be listening to this. Um, I think I'm a bit of a sponge. A bit coming back to what we were just saying, like a bit of a sponge for, oh, something needs doing, or like this is gonna get done. Like I'll kind of take it on, and then I squeeze it into an already busy lifestyle. My official thing that when I came onto, like, Motus was really, really, really struggling for so much longer than, like, there were so many things that made it hard, and then we had a load of things happen in a row that kind of put the nail in the coffin. Um, and it was in a really tough place. And then obviously Star put that call out for, like, hey, we want some help with, e-commerce. And I just literally remember, like, seeing it, initially being completely disheartened, because I was like, oh, brilliant, Star are just continuing to scale, and, like, they're hiring new people, and
Mm-hmm.
Motus is just struggling. And I went and had a shower, and it's the classic, like, shower thoughts thing. I was like, this is the most obvious thing in the world. So I called up Drew, and the rest is kind of history. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so initially, that first kind of year, I came on predominantly just to help with the clothing, like kind of just to get it up to scratch. I'm not Bloggy was there to sort of help with design stuff. He now actually doesn't work for Story. He's kind of doing his own thing. But like, so Keelan came on to edit. I was there basically just to, like, they had spent so many years really focused on YouTube. They then had the video game in development, the film taking off, which was just like
Yeah.
the biggest mental strain and time suck for Drew. Like, this unbelievable amounts of, like, back end legal logistics, all this shit for that film. Because I don't know how much people know about it, but, like, a lot of it involves obviously the back catalogue, but then there were loads of on location shoots to sort of pad it out. You've obviously seen it. So, like, that was huge for him. So so the clothing was really just like, you take that YouTube audience and then you look at sort of the scale of how the clothing was doing, and it didn't
Yep.
match up. So I just came on basically to take all that knowledge I had from Otis and say and sort of implement that, and immediately kind of we had a really good like turnaround on that, which was great. And I mean, there's still even today there's still a lot of levers that need to be pulled in terms of I've always called it like an identity crisis between the YouTube audience of whatever sort of demographics and ages they are, and then like kind
Hmm.
of how we position the clothing, which we all kind of want the clothing to be not like high end streetwear, but just it's not. We don't want it to be shitty merch, and there is a lot. There's a huge amount of that YouTube audience who see it as they just assume it's YouTuber merch. So
Hmm.
when we're over here increasing the quality, which in turn increases the prices, you throw in all the economic struggles of the world and everything getting more expensive and harder, etc., etc., etc. Um,
You're welcome, by the way.
I mean, it's screwing you guys. Well, not more than it's screwing us, but it's it's there's been a you have America is our second largest country to ship to, and that conversion sort of rate has been hit hard this year in terms of all the stuff that your delightful president has done. But anyway, to go back, so like um, where was I going with that? Yeah,
You're talking
the
about
the the
converting. Yeah.
the identity crisis is kind of that's what I was saying. So there's a lot of levers to still improve on the clothing side of things. But kind of as time has gone on, like Drew pulled obviously it's kind of more back from the YouTube to focus once more on just like the video game, getting the movie over the finish line. I kind of just inherited just I mean, I don't know, we don't have official roles or anything, but I kind of business management, ops, like operations, like a
Hmm.
lot of all the kind of operational bullshit on the back end of the clothing is me. Whether that's
Yeah.
organizing a launch,
Logistics.
getting we now work with we were using suppliers that I was sort of one of the main people emailing and trying to deal with all of that, and it's just as my role expanded to taking a lot more things, I just was like I had to look at it and be like, what is that? Is that chart? I can't remember what it's called, but you draw a grid and you do
Hmm.
what are you good at and you enjoy? What are you good at but you don't enjoy? What are you bad at and you enjoy? What do you divide it
Yeah.
up. And it's like I'm not particularly good at actually designing clothing. Never have been, never would say I was. And also I don't enjoy it. So we now work with an amazing set of partners who basically are kind of like our sourcing agent. So they have like a their own supply chain, which is vetted and they've worked with it for years, and they have a much better communications sort of system with them, and they actually design products. So now this is sort of a recent development in the last year, but now we work with them. So we say, hey, look,
Yeah.
this is all the stuff we want to do. We'll map out. We've got like the best part of a year's worth of stuff in the pipeline. Some in sampling, some in designing, some's already some sick in the warehouse. Um, so yeah, a lot of liaising with them. Once that product kind of gets, then there's the actual operation of getting it from, whether it's the shoes in Portugal or the clothing in China or whatever, like getting that to the country, you get that booked in, then it's all the back end Shopify website bullshit, kind of all the standard ecom stuff
Yeah.
that you've got.
Can I ask you
Um,
a question on the ecom side? So
yeah.
I think this would be interesting because there are so many people in the community who want to be creators or want to
Mm,
kind of build a brand in the way that Store has. And, hearing you say that you came in and found some levers, identified some levers to be pulled, what do you feel like the low hanging fruit what were the low-hanging fruit for in the case of Store, if you can share that? And when you look around at other folks, I mean, I look at somebody like Bob Reese, who has a huge reach. What would be, in your opinion, the low-hanging fruit for other parkour brands to convert, since we are in a time period where Scotchy just closed down,
yeah.
Etrafort for like obviously Modus. We've seen a lot of these brands struggle in that
So
process.
I think the low hanging fruit for Stora was slightly not completely different for like someone like Bob or I'm just thinking of big name,
Matt
Dom. He obviously
LaRose, Matt LaRose has whatever 19 million subscribers on YouTube, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think so for Stora a lot of it was like operations and system based. Their 3PL that
Mhm.
they were using, their fulfillment house was this like little family run one in like near Horsham, that they were lovely. They were amazing on email and things. But when it came to, when Brexit came in, suddenly all our EU customers are getting hit by horrific charges. So the EU conversion drops. And it's like, right, well, if we move to a better fulfillment center, we can, set up the IOSS system. Now, this is like we basically treat their tax like our tax. So we actually take a hit on the, we lose margin on it, but it increases the order volume. So like stuff like that. Now we've had to do the same thing for the US because obviously the de minimis
Tariffs.
is gone, and
Yeah.
and the tariffs, double whammy there. So we actually had to move fulfillment center again last year. Turned off US shipping for like a month and had to move again because for Stora it was like pulling levers to make it actually just significantly easier for the customer to purchase. Like was a huge thing that there was work that needed to be done there. Then there's just increasing the volume of product, kind of listening to the audience a bit more, and there other things like that. I think the challenge with people like Bob, for example, is there needs to be a reason to to buy, and there will always be an audience, once you get to a certain size, who does just want the generic, Bob Reese
They want to
t-shirt.
support the creator.
Yeah, and they're happy to just wear like the logo or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think
Bob as the Cookie Monster on a blue
exactly. Yeah. But there needs to be for real like legitimate growth. There you kind of need to tick, ideally, a multiple of boxes. But ideally, given fast fashion and everything, you want to be putting out something that has some form of purpose and won't just end up in a bin in a few months' time. So that's kind of one thing but that's obviously harder and more expensive. If we're talking t-shirts, a t-shirt is at the end of the day a t-shirt, but you can make a shit t-shirt or a better t-shirt that is better. But I think really it's seeing, and this is still something that I think Stora could improve upon, is seeing the creator's interest in that product. Like people are bored and don't care about, oh, I'm really famous and now I'm suddenly selling a coffee mug. It's like, who gives a shit? But like if I can't, I don't know,
if
Seth
you worked
Rogen
as a coffee roaster, for instance, and then you made a coffee mug.
Exactly. It's like, Seth Rogen, do you remember, I think it was like in the pandemic, got really into like ceramics, and he was making like little joint holders and things. I can't remember what that company's called. But I think it's done really fucking well. I could be wrong, but from memory. But that's a very good example, and it's almost he's got so much leverage because he's so famous, and he's if you take a well, just if you actually show that you care about the reason this product is existing, and sort of the reason you're putting it out in the world, because the more you're interested in, the more you share that, the more interest and demand you will have for it. Like, Max and Benj, they barely, I think you can DM them on the Caveman Instagram and buy their art prints, but like, and I keep saying to them, they really should just set up a proper store to sell it. But if they were to do that, even if they weren't necessarily attached to Stora, but they obviously had their kind of long-standing Cavemen artwork that they put out, and it's on social and things, they would have a much better chance at turning that into, some form of income or revenue-generating thing than if, Bob Reese isn't the best example, but just someone with a big Instagram following who had never seen do that in the past suddenly went, oh, I'm making this now. It's like you need to nurture that understanding and that connection with the creator.
Yes, I guess my bigger question here that I think has been coming up in some of these conversations, and I'm currently editing the full cut of our project that we've been shooting with Davis Vasconcelos for the last 3 years, and one of the big things in that is his relationship to the broader extreme sports community, and what comes up talking with his sister Nora and Jimmy Wilkins and a bunch of other folks in those communities is, they look at parkour, and I think a lot of people, including people in parkour, look at our sport and they see a lack of sustainable, I guess, capitalistic ventures. They see that there's not a lot of way to build infrastructure. And what's always fascinated me is that you look at one of the biggest revenue driving sports, running, casual running,
Mm.
and you don't need anything to go run. You can get your shitty $20 sneakers, go outside, run around in your neighborhood. But the way that it has been marketed and the way that brands have been able to develop their voice and connect to athletes and et cetera, like build events, they've obviously created a gigantic infrastructure there. And I feel like I've started to see Store do something similar where there is a very identifiable brand voice. I also want to, I'll bring up, and I brought this up in the episode with Wenson. I've been a huge fan of the like Super 8 and 16 mil stuff that Sasha and Toby and Josh have been doing. I think that
Yeah.
the all of the like really thoughtful advertising goes a long way to doing what you're saying, which is making the customer feel like the clothing is not an afterthought, but is a part of the sort of like entire creative venture or brand that is Storer. And yeah, I guess I just wanted to get your perspective on like, is there reason to hope from a sort of commercial infrastructure perspective in parkour? Obviously, there's a ton of struggles, and we just talked about a lot of brands that have, had those issues. But what are your thoughts on that? And it's not really a question, more of just a vibe check.
It's really, really hard. I think parkour is still so much kind of in its infancy, and I think there's still so many. There's such a sort of vibe around the, if you came on and tried to position yourself as, you need this to do parkour, I think you're going to face, not outright rejection, but it's there's still so many people who do have that mentality if we don't need anything. And yeah, I don't know. It is really challenging. I mean, as you said, it's like running is such an interesting example because, Sarah's been running recently, and the first thing she did I mean, granted, she's running in the dark and she didn't have like a jacket to sort of reflect cars and things, but she went out and bought a night jacket and like,
Mhm.
quite a nice, like, I don't know how much it costs, but like, and it's sort of, I need this to run. And it's like, well, you don't, but you, you've kind of been convinced that you kind of do. And I think, yeah, like we definitely try to do a little bit of that with parkour, or at least I think that's where it comes to, sorry, I said with parkour, with Stora, like showing where we're trying to build in function to some of this stuff, in the sense that, it's
Mhm.
not like you need a pair of the Stora's like hardware cargos to train. But if you're going out and you're shredding Brighton rooftops and doing loads of skids down roofs and things, like, we're designing them to help you in that scenario. Um, the 16 mil stuff is actually super interesting because it's like Josh and Sasha who basically do most of that, well, all of that really, and they are just like un untamable creative wizards in that sense. The amount of times I'm like, guys, we need like something short form that's going to work on social because that's where we'll get the most reach, and they go out and make like a
Mhm.
2 minute long movie. And it's this tough balance that we have internally where those films don't actually convert that well in terms of direct sales. Like, you can put one of them
Mhm.
out and put it in a YouTube video and put them on Instagram, and the lift that you get isn't nearly as significant as something that is slightly more curated for, like a reel on Instagram or whatever. But
Yeah.
they are integral to, as you said, the brand voice and the brand like image. So it's this balance kind of almost, and I think it's another thing that we need to really work on. It's like, I want to be doing more of those films, but also at the same time doing, more social first stuff as well, because it's finding that balance so that you portray the aspirational brand as the kind of, you want people to envision it like this, but the stuff that actually is probably going to get them to click is, Toby doing like, I don't know if you remember, we did like, I always use this example because the impact of it was insane, but we had a backpack online for like, I don't know, 6 months, and it had done pretty well. I think we were on the second run of it or whatever. And then I got Toby to do this reel where he just like, I just was like, oh, can you do a video where you just explain the features? And he filmed it in his
Mhm.
quirky way, like lying on his bedroom floor. And it was like one of the biggest like catalysts for, and it's stuff like that where it's like, they've seen the aspirational and then the kind of the creator focused conversational and informative aspect then kind of pushes them over the line, and it's
Yeah.
marrying up those two. I mean, Wensin, I fucking love his work. Like he's one of those people. It's like you want a Wensin in house. Like, um,
The amount of times
but
I'm like, God, I wish I could pay Wenson to edit
yeah, yeah,
anything for Point
yeah, like
A.
yeah, because I think
Yeah.
he does such a good job of, like, you take like someone like Josh is like, he's basically like a director. He's an
Yeah.
artist, and he's quite, as I said, he's quite hard to like to tame and put in a box. Sasha's more of the just wild creative genius, and you can kind of give him a dog turd and it'll make it look amazing. Um, but I think Wensin is almost like a little bit of both of those guys plus commercially minded, and it's like, yeah, he's fucking
Yeah.
talented.
I
So
think he's got the raw talent that has then been funneled through having to work in the minefield that is like commercial
yeah,
film and social, especially short form editing and video production,
yeah,
when you have to
which
work for 50 different brands and every director has got a slightly different communication style. It's like, yeah, you refine those skills in a different way than you have to when you're working for yourself and your boss
yeah,
is your best friend.
and it's tough because I think it's it's so easy to go, oh well, I don't like you know making that. I genuinely slowed down video work on the Visive side. Like, I found it really hard to do work for commercial clients because I just didn't enjoy working for other people. I just like making parkour videos and like things I wanted. So it's and the world is now moving so fast in terms of what works and what people want. So it's hard to be that malleable as a creative to go, oh right, well I
Hmm.
guess I'm doing vertical short form, and it's got to have this hook at the start, and it's da 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 da, and
Hmm.
oh suddenly carousels are the big thing now, and da 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 da. Um, really really hard as a creative, but unfortunately it's kind of also it's we're all playing the same game in that sense. Like it's there's people who don't play the game and they do it, but it's fucking hard. So
Yeah.
um
So from all those things that you just broke down, media, e-commerce, logistics, let's say I'm a parkour gym owner
yeah.
and
I realized we
let's
never
just
we never
say,
finished talking about what I do for Stora, but no.
yeah, I think we've realized that it's everything other than being in the video
I booked the
and
guy's
actively
flights.
shooting.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, carry on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You make sure that Sasha gets his pulp-free orange juice every
Yeah,
morning.
yeah, yeah, yeah. His protein.
You
What's he
act
eating, guys?
you
He's
strain
always.
it out.
What's he always eating? Protein porridge. I think at the moment I always see him with. He's got like a little
I
metal.
really
He's
I'm gonna put this in your brain. I said I told Sasha that I would love to have him on the podcast at some point whenever he's comfortable, but
yeah, yeah.
I really want a Sasha solo comeback, just like a Sasha training video.
We
Just
were
give me like a
talking about
3 minute part.
yeah, we were talking about like a whole transformation piece in the office the other day that I think he does want to do, like a his
Yeah.
story kind of thing. It's so
It's been
cool.
great just seeing his I mean, even chatting with him in Austin, I could see that, he was in I think a really good headspace even then, but it
Mm,
seems, yeah, from the outside looking in and just chatting with him, it seems like he's really happy with where his everything that he has under his control. It seems he's happy with what he's doing with that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah,
all
yeah.
that anybody can
Hope
do
for,
in
yeah.
any situation, right? Is like
Yeah,
the things
exactly.
that I can control, I'm happy with how I'm controlling them.
Yeah,
And yeah, I love looking at his content right now and just being like, yes, I'm so happy for
yeah.
you. It seems
It's
like
so
you're just
sick.
in a good spot. But what I was gonna say is, so let's say I'm in Apex Denver, right? Or another parkour gym. From everything that you just learned, what, in a nutshell, would be your advice for general communications? Because that's kind of what I've gotten from you, is that on the broadest level, so much of what you seem to be doing is finding a way to communicate to people what is exciting about Modus or Visive or now Storer. But do you
So
have any quick takeaways?
I think for one, transparency and like authenticity goes a long way. I think that's something that I was really kind of proud of with motors, and something that I didn't really realize until years later, like how it's weird with motors. I still meet some people who are so kind of like connected to it and cut up. I didn't realize like how strong of a yeah, but I didn't realize how strong of like a following it had. I knew it was doing
Hmm.
pretty well in the community, but it didn't. It was nothing to the size of Store or whatever. But I think within the community, it had a real core following, and it felt it's yeah. And I think that's not to say it was all me. The guys were in incredible parts of that. But I think something that I was always very passionate about was just being open and transparent. And I think people, another polished set of photos from the inside of your gym. Not to say this is what parkour gyms do, but like,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, we're all communicating on social or YouTube, right? Like, unless
Hmm.
you are local, that's all your presence is. There's the unfortunate truth that you probably need to be posting more because you just don't see half of what goes out because of the fucking algorithm. Um, Once again, like another thing that we can improve out with stories, like we don't post nearly enough. It feels like you're putting out. It's that weird kind of, I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but the people who really like fuck with you don't mind if they see your posts all the time. The people
Hmm.
who don't won't see your posts all the time because they're not engaging with it. So it's not like they're seeing it. There'll be a period of time where maybe there's a slight influx more of your content, but if they're not your target audience and they're not going to engage with that content anyway, the algorithms will basically slow down the amount you're seeing that. um so that's the sort of depressing part, is that, but yeah, it's authenticity, communicating from like it doesn't have to be the owner, but having someone who is communicating on a more human level, and not
Having a
necessarily,
voice.
yeah, having a voice. And there's different ways to do that. Some people, there's some of the like podcasts I listen to now, they're banging on about doing, like, they call them like social shows, small, either script based or ad lib, not ad lib, ad lib, yeah, like off the cuff,
Hmm.
like concept shows that the actual back end of the thing is to promote the product, but actually you're not caring about the product. You're watching something that you find entertaining. That's an extreme example, but um, having personality, having something that people can connect with, and I think something that I've always thought with about gyms is that, and some of them are fantastic at it when you go there, but you don't see it from the outside, is curating that, like that place for the youth to go and to connect, and to
Yeah.
be a hub of culture. And whether that's having a shop there, I've always thought like more gyms should be doing, like How Five with Nico, they do their like
Yeah.
parkour, I don't know if they call it movie nights, but like, they're always showing parkour videos and essentially giving the kids like education on the cult, because so many, you know let's be frank, most parkour gyms are surviving off of kids lessons, right? Especially in America, some of these kids just, they go and do parkour class. Like, it's not like they're in the culture, and therefore it is kind of the gym's opportunity to ingrain them into the culture.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there's a number of ways to do that for the people attending the gym, but then also to document that, to show that that gym is not just a commercial space where you come and you pay your money and you do your training or you do your exercise, and it's more like this is a cultural hub. It's somewhere that you can come and hang out, even if you don't want to train that day. Like, climbing
Yeah.
centers have curated that vibe. Some climbing centers have curated that vibe really nicely. Not that they
Yeah.
necessarily promote it and talk about it. Maybe some do, I don't know. But I think some climbing gyms you go to and you're like, I feel like I could just get a coffee and hang out here all day.
The
Some
movement
parkour
gym,
gyms,
Brandon and I go and work from there
yeah,
regularly in
yeah,
here
yeah,
in
yeah.
Denver. Yeah.
Whereas, and obviously, space, rent costs, design, etc. There's limiting factors there, but I think the more that gyms can do to curate that kind of environment and then share it in like a meaningful, honest, like human way, as opposed to like some sales thing, you're
Yeah.
gonna you're gonna get more exposure. And then I guess also giving people a reason to travel from further afield to your gym, whether that's
Hmm.
hosting, an athlete such as yourself to come in and teach, or a small event. And it's like, you're not going to start the next, sport parkour league overnight, but starting something small, whether it's an event or a competition, or whatever, these things, it's compounding, isn't it? So
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
it's convincing Storer to come and summit Mount Elbert in the summer in Denver, and then organizing an event around it
yeah,
and
yeah,
getting
yeah. Very
Giles to
true.
find sponsor funding for that. No, I think that's great. I really like your point about retail, like having a space you were talking about in the culture aspect, having like the movie nights, but I think you'd also mentioned,
Yeah,
something about retail. That's something that I always am amazed more gyms don't
I
do,
mean, it's
is just
it,
having some, like at Apex, for instance, which is the gym that I know the best 'cause it's my local space. They have strike shoes, which is great,
mhm,
but you go to a commercial climbing facility and they have 15
yeah,
different brands. Half of their space in the lobby is dedicated to having just wholesale retail sales. And I think that's such a great opportunity. In a sense, I think some gyms maybe look at it as like overhead, or they have to maintain stock and they're worried about that. But it is a great intro. When someone walks in, they see there's a
to the
physical
culture.
culture here.
Exactly.
Yes.
That is, it's a huge thing I've always thought of. I mean, it's hard for both sides. Like, you know,
Yeah.
on let's say our side, I sort of briefly tried it with Motus and sort of put some feelers out for gyms and things, and it is hard because you take products that already your margin isn't great on because you're not, your unit economics aren't nearly as good as a bigger brand,
Hmm.
and then you've got to give a wholesale discount on it. And also, like your average parkour gym will be like, "Oh right, okay, can we have a wholesale discount on 5 t-shirts?" And you're like, "Well, I'm not,"
Yeah.
And then I actually getting them over, okay, well, who's paying shipping, who's paying import tax, da, 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 da. Suddenly it's like, well, this is a
Hmm.
headache. I think there's a kind of economies of scale thing with wholesale that is a little bit tricky to get around. But
Yeah.
and then on the gym side, you've got the same challenges, especially if you're a UK gym, you're doing wholesale of a UK uh Star, like, Star, for example, and then suddenly discounts all their stuff by 50% because it's a, Black Friday sale, and then you're holding on to that's just one
Hmm.
example of things when it comes to wholesale that you've got to kind of be mindful of. Stock
Yeah.
prices,
I
etc.
guess
But
what I would like to say too is that if you are a parkour gym, especially here in the States, and store being the best example because there is a huge market for store here in the US, because logistically it has gotten much more expensive in the last year to purchase. I mean, it is, I think, 50 pounds, so 70, almost $70 US for me to pay shipping on
it's
anything. If not, and I think that's the minimum the last time I
well,
had checked.
so when was that recently?
It was probably a few months ago, so it may have changed in the last
No, so
couple of months.
so the annoying thing, right, is so that shipping to the US, we've actually now got it to a stage where it's not it's not going to be nice, but it's not horrendous.
Yeah.
The issue is that you guys will get slapped with tariffs as a Trump took away the de minimis, which is this. There used to be this £800 threshold. Anything under that
Yeah.
didn't get customs. Took that way. Don't know why. And then obviously now tariffs on stuff, whether it's made in the UK, made in China, etc. China's obviously one of the worst. At one point those tariffs were going through the roof. This stuff all came in so quickly that we initially turned off US shipping for a month, which was just utterly
Mhm.
brutal because otherwise people were ordering stuff and then and also the customs will take it and then they'll
Yep.
charge admin fees for that. And it would, somebody would order a t-shirt and be like, why am I being asked to pay $100 extra?
Mhm.
We now have a system set up where you can prepay those charges and they will be significantly less than if we sent that package to you and it sat at customs because all the added charges.
Mhm.
So it's the cheapest we can get it for the customer,
Yeah.
but we basically give the customer the option to prepay at checkout. The issue is that unless you're on the enterprise plan of Shopify, which is like a considerable amount more money
Yeah.
per month, you can't separate, because I looked into this again recently because it drives me mad. You can't separate the included taxes and duties from the shipping line. So when you get, and this is just,
It's
you don't,
all bundled into shipping.
it's all
Yeah.
bundled. So people see the shipping fee and it does technically say like includes duties and taxes or whatever, but
Yeah.
you see however much for shipping and go, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you for correcting that, because my point there is not
I mean,
to
it's so
shit on your
no, no,
shipping
no, no.
costs. It is to say that for an American gym, if I'm a 12-year-old kid who wants to get one of the new store basic t-shirts and I go to my mom and she's like, I'm not paying $35 for shipping on your $30 t-shirt, it
Yeah,
would be fantastic for more facilities to look at a $2,000 wholesale order from a company like Store as both a marketing and
yeah.
internal brand
I
decision and expense, because those are the kids that will go and they'll show up at their local gym in Indiana or Arizona or wherever it is in the US, and they're going to go, "Oh, cool, I can buy the shirt for the same that I would get it online. I don't have to pay for shipping."
exactly.
And simultaneously, now that gym is associated with Store for the gym owner, and
Yeah.
there's a certain air of legitimacy that these bigger parkour brands do have that I've always fascinated more gyms have not tried to tap into. Because to me, if
Mm.
I were a gym owner, I'd say, yeah, I want to ride on Store's coattails as much as I possibly can. Why would I not try to tap into, 10.9 million subscriber market? I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah, yeah, yeah.
several million of those are probably American viewers. So it's like any
Yeah.
chance that I can get to put Store on my website, even if it's just to say that you can get a pair of Store
It's
10s or a t-shirt, it's like, yes, that's a marketing expense.
100%. It's really like whenever I do like, kind of data pools, I did a big annual review just last month, kind of looking back at the last year, and basically there's just two things that are always in my head of like all I need to do is just make it easier for predominantly Germans and Americans to check out. Like our two biggest
Yeah.
markets after the UK by a long way are Germany and America, and it's like we're in this really annoying position where we have a very, very global audience, many, many people around who want to purchase. And even if we weren't a global, even if it was just Germany and America, we've kind of tapped out in terms of how accessible we can make that for those people in terms of
Mhm.
price, unless things in the world change, without obviously eating tons of margin ourselves, which obviously we're doing already. Like people, might look at high prices
Yeah.
and go, "Oh, these guys are making millions." It's like no, um, we're also not big enough that we could put a fulfillment center in the US, for example. Like
Mhm.
we probably need to be 5 times the size we are to start thinking about that. To get there, how do you get there when everything is so hard in it's the same with like
Mhm.
putting a fulfillment center in the EU, slightly more achievable, but financially, logistically, a massive, massive thing to
Yeah.
to commit to. And if you're going to do it, you need to absolutely guarantee it's going to pay off. Uh, yeah, it's this weird. We're in this kind of weird. We're really really big, but also not big enough to do those things. It's tough.
Yeah. No, I think this has been really nerdy, and anybody who's
Yeah,
made it this far, I hope that they're getting
unfortunately
it's this is
this
the
is
stuff
my
that's important. And this
this
is
is
one of the
kind of
reasons I've wanted to chat with you, is because I think that in in parkour, I'm very guilty of this, and I know this about myself, which is why I've tried to surround myself with people who are the opposite personality type. I love the first 90% of a project. The last
mm,
10%, the details, the finessing, I now, as I'm older, am getting more interested in, because I see the value in it. But people, I mean, the 80/20 rule is there for a reason. So
yeah.
much value comes from answering and thinking about these questions. And one thing that I did want to just kind of end on is, I think we're in a really interesting spot culturally in the sport where, again, not to, constantly bring up Modus, I think that they're such a good example because A, you were so transparent about the entire process. It is, I think your description of Modus as being sort of like a core component of the international parkour scene is very accurate. Like, it was the parkour athlete brand.
Mm,
You like really are in the scene, and that is who's supporting Modus. And I think that was one of the best things about Modus. You look at Modus, you look at, in the US and across the world, all of the gyms that have closed from COVID, and then up till now, you look at other brands, Farang making the decision to close Scotchy,
Frank
Etrafort
coming
a few
back.
years
Frank coming back.
ago. Farang are coming back, which is super
Yeah.
exciting. But from your perspective, how have you seen I guess, the community and the culture shift in the last 10 or 15 years, and where do you feel like we're at now?
It's a hard one to answer because I'm very wary of falling into the kind of trap of where I've seen it so many times over the years. Normally, it will start with a Facebook post, "Oh, I'm giving up parkour." Some big, "Oh, I'm leaving Instagram. Oh, I'm giving up parkour." And then, a year later, that same person is posting on Facebook about how the community's dead, and it's actually just because they're not engaged with it anymore. And actually, things, if you in pockets around, there'll be incredibly progressive things happening. Um,
Mhm.
and so I'm absolutely, I don't think that is the case. It does feel like, I mean, things have changed. Obviously, they've changed. There's some amazing, amazing stuff happening. I am not the best person to even ask about them because I'm so bad at consuming parkour content. Like legitimately, I think one of your questions that you preempted me with was something about like my views on parkour videos, and I can't lie, like I very rarely watch them, and I don't know if that's because there's not any that are interesting me. Maybe just the ones that might appeal to me haven't sort of got through. I just don't watch that much YouTube, to be honest. Um, I do wish there was what felt like another. It feels like we haven't had another like young dynamic team in a while. Like you get like the commons, you get solo athletes. I mean, obviously, you get like kind of Capstone doing their thing, but obviously that's not a team.
Mhm.
I think it would be
Can
nice
I
to
ask you a
see.
question there?
Yeah.
Because 'Cause I'm curious, I think I I have had the same thought, and do you feel like it's because people have seen the team dynamic fail? Like, do you feel like people look at that path, like, I don't wanna say career path, but they look at, I think Fat is probably the best example in recent memory, and you look at the landscape of parkour, and it's like, who are the people that are able to create traction? And, mm, I'm curious if your take on it, that's maybe my take, is that if I
I
were
think
15, I'd be like, "Who do I imitate other than Store?"
Yeah, because I guess imitation is a part of it that, like, you almost don't wanna see the imitation because you don't wanna see the
Well,
next
who do you use
s
as proof of concept, right? Like, if you're a kid and you're like, "I
Yeah.
wanna succeed," I'm looking at, again, you know,
I
I'm looking at
what I
Store,
wanna
but
s
Bob Reese, Matt LaRose, Dom, Joe, Capstone, all these solo athletes, and I'm going, "Okay, that's probably my best bet."
what I wanna see is more like, I guess, like, naive optimism and joy and, like, just loving. I don't know, it doesn't feel like maybe on the Europe scene. No, there's still a decent amount of community events. But it feels like the community events are quite the videos that come out of them are either dictated by the event or I think that culture of like traveling to, different jams across Europe and making your own videos about it and showing your own experience feels once again, maybe I'm just not seeing some of this stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's as common. So it feels like the stuff you're seeing is either, you know, the event or the team. I mean, there's people like Keeper, I guess, and or Keeper,
Yeah.
however you pronounce it. And they're doing amazing stuff. But like, I don't know, where's the next Kipper and where's the next Motus and stuff like that would be cool to see. I I mean, this is just a personal gripe. I'm not a massive fan of like the edgy. There's a lot of edginess in the scene over the last couple of years. A lot of kind of like feeling like it's trying a bit too hard to fit certain aesthetics and certain sort of things, and it feels performative, and it doesn't feel like it's capturing the real side of what they're actually doing. And I think that's not really answering the question, but that's sort
Mhm.
of something that I feel. And then I think I don't know. It's off topic. I don't know if you're going to ask this question, but one of my big worries is more it's seeing genuine success and like uh almost safety for some of these bigger name athletes who are up there is something that worries me a lot. Like, there's people, who have hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers and are some of the top athletes in their sport, and, you know, their lives are not set financially, commercially, etc. And it's like, it's not to say they've put the ladder up against the wrong wall, but it's uh, I think it would be reassuring for other people within the sport to see more success stories through doing the sport and trying to do more than just be, an active participant who does it as a hobby. Like, and I think that is, I guess that kind of answers the team question. It's like that's why it's hard. It's hard to see real potential when, as you sort of said earlier with Davis's thing, it's like we just still don't have that like real structure of an economy and like a supportive industry within the sport, and big opportunities come and then they go and they happen in pockets to you know people, whether it's Star and things like this. But it's,
Hmm.
yeah, it's, I don't know if I answered the question at all, but
I think you answered it from your perspective, from what you're seeing with Store, and I think it's actually great that you don't have a like microscopic view of the parkour scene, like video to video, because I
well, because
I
I
think
used
that's
to, I used to feel so tapped into everything, and I kind of loved it, and I prided myself on it. And now I feel like I've just, as you said, it's a balance. I just feel like I've swung the other way. Um,
it's also gotten harder, I think, as content has moved to short form. And I think
yeah,
that's another thing that discourages what you were talking about, for instance, with jam videos. Every Instagram post is a 45-second jam recap. And
yeah,
I do agree that I think that's had a potentially like a negative cultural impact on our sport. I think that's obviously a broader, you could probably say that about every sport and its
yeah.
cultural development since the introduction of short form content. Um,
Unless you
but
do run clubs, because apparently that thing just thrives on meeting up
short
for a
form,
coffee and going for a run. Yeah, so
there you go. Well, with all of those things that you just said, I think cautious optimism is how I definitely feel for my own reasons. But from your perspective, where do you like, are you optimistic about the future of where this sort of sport and culture are going, or how do you feel about the next couple of years?
yeah, no, I think I am, because I think it would be, when it comes to something like parkour, there's no benefit to being negative about it. Like, if you're negative about, the development of it, you've tapped out and you're not trying anymore. Like, although my work now is so, at the moment, so kind of like behind the scenes and things, and I'm still contributing to the scene and Star, but I'm obviously not doing nearly as much as I was. It's like I I do feel still very connected and feel like we can, we're doing little bits to help keep things going. And I think I it's a sport that is free. It'll always exist, and there are certain people within that sport who are doing. I mean, I think Lilu is. I've said it to her twice now. I said it on Instagram the other day. I shouted it in her ear at Oslo because the music was so loud, and I hadn't seen her, and I knew I wasn't. I was like briefly going to see her. I walked up and I was like, I think you are one of the most like impactful and important people in the sport right now, because she is doing wonders in terms of just I think from where she is positioning herself and the opportunity she's getting. It's like, you know, that's a very individual thing for her, but it's that sort of rising tide effect. Is that she's kind of kicking down doors that I think have not been kicked down before with some of the opportunities she's getting, and all those things help. All those things help, and
Mhm.
things like that, enable other things to happen. Star's Michael Bay movie, whenever that comes out, that will enable other things to happen. So like, there's always progressive things happening, and there's so much culture within, the Commons, Capstone, that is, still doing sick, amazing stuff. It's just the sport changes form as it goes, and I think it has highs and lows in terms of when it really feels like it's at peaks. We can look back at, the time when everyone thought parkour was a fad, however, 15 years ago, and I meet people all the time who's like, oh, I thought that was a bit of a fad, and it's like, no, it's still going. It's bigger than it ever was. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I'm definitely optimistic. I wish we sorted things out a little bit ourselves. I think I wish the people within parkour were a little bit better at that, but I think it doesn't necessarily attract the type of people who then are good at some of that stuff. So
Yeah. Well, the
yeah,
unfortunate and fortunate thing I think about seeing a lot of the hard realities of running a parkour business in the last 5 to 10 years is that, I do think we're seeing that window of anybody can o open a parkour clothing brand. Anybody can open a gym. That window has closed in the sense that it's not as open-ended as it was, but I also think that that is good motivation for the people who do wanna go into it, to go into it with their eyes open about the realities of what running a business like that actually entails, and putting the extra 10% of effort in to ensure success, and I do think that that means that what is left does end up a much higher quality, and, for me, the perspective of cautious optimism, I think that we have moments where a lot of the community's energy is outward facing, and I
Yeah.
think the last few years have been very inward facing. I think we've been doing
Mm.
a lot of, community-wide soul searching, and it feels like we're kind of on a simmer where all of the flavors are developing so that when the
I
next
think
outward facing
especially
moment happens,
the
we're gonna be in
US
a
has
great
been like that
position.
for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the US has had a really nice like developmental period in terms of I mean you guys have had some seasons in terms of different leaders of your communities from different states sort of pushing parkour in different ways from your Corys and Jessies to your Commons to whatever. Like it's and yeah, I think it as you said, it's just it comes and goes, and I think it's all important. It's all beneficial. It's just there's a kind of a weathering of the storm and sort of being able to stay in it for as long as possible, which I think is hard if you are a solo athlete and you peak at the wrong time, which is
Mhm.
that's a challenge for sure. And you sort of don't manage to get sustained commercial success off of that because then it's like, well, what do I do now if you fall out of love with the sport or an injury takes you out or something like that? So I was going to say something, but I've forgotten. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I think there is actually probably a bigger opportunity than most people think to build some form of a product based brand within the scene right now. I think people will still be very, very receptive of, you know, people making stuff. You don't necessarily need a massive audience. Like it used to be like, oh, whack out loads of videos, kind of get to like not Fats level because I guess they're a bit bigger now, but a half decent size on YouTube, and then try and start selling your own t-shirts and hope people buy them, which never really worked that well. Like it really, I think that was a lot harder than people thought. I can
Mhm.
think of so many YouTube channels and people who try to do that, but I think now, given how connected the parkour community is on Instagram, using that platform to just build a small audience of people who connect with your product, and that product doesn't have to be a parkour t-shirt, but could be your art or something. And I think just playing the game, so to speak, on social of just how to build an audience there. I think it's the best thing about parkour is that it almost tricks you into thinking that everything else is as easy as selling to parkour. Because if you didn't have an active community already, it's selling to just your neighbors and your friends and going from zero to no one is a billion times harder. Like
Yeah.
technically, parkour is on easy mode for any kind of product based stuff if you can kind of put the work in. Gyms, totally different story, obviously.
Yeah.
Much bigger undertaking. But for putting out something that you're proud of, a product, digital, physical, art, t-shirts, something you've sewed, I think parkour is the one of the easiest places you could start to do that. And if you can then gain traction there, then you can look at scaling it. But I think also people need to not look at some of these ventures as, oh, this could be my full-time career. That's where it's still
Mhm.
harder. But to do something creative and get some kind of gain from it, if you want to, you don't have to, of course. But if you want to sort of get some kind of financial impactful gain, I think parkour is a great place to do it. You just got to be like, and don't be afraid to start because it's like I said, it's a receptive community. It's more friendly than posting to the abyss where no one's going to see it. So
That's very true. Well, I think that was a good positive note to start to wrap on.
I feel like I
We didn't
haven't.
even get to talk about how awesome it is to be a dad. So you can get in
I mean, I can keep
thumbs up
going.
or thumbs down, thumbs up or
Uh,
thumbs down on being a parent.
well, I've just had Daisy for 2 days be sick at home, and basically on Monday, Tuesday when I want to be getting lots of work done. So right now I'm like
It's
like
a bit.
I find it really, really challenging when I'm in work mode to not be
Oh,
in
it's
work
so
mode.
hard. Yeah, it's so hard to
I
work from home and then try to
yeah.
balance kid.
I used to have a little office in Riley's room. Now I'm going to show you how messy my living room is right now. But now I have this little floor desk, and this is how I work from home. Where I try and stretch my hips out because they're so tight. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is the greatest thing in the world, and I would never change it for the world. At the same time, as somebody who finds it really hard to turn their brain off, um, there can be massive challenges, and also just kids can be really fucking challenging and tiring. So yeah,
It's a lot of energy, but I
yeah,
agree.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's the best thing that's ever happened to me, I think, being a dad.
yeah.
It's pretty rad.
It's all right. Get to.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think right now we're very happy with one.
Yeah. Just wait. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, it's all good. The last question I always ask everybody. Well, I'm going to ask you a double last question because of
I've got
your
a double barrel
parkour
name.
nerdery.
Oh,
You got a double barrel name. Also that. No, well, the last question I always like to ask is if you had a piece of media that you'd recommend to the listener. But before that, do you have a favorite parkour video? We were talking a little bit in the opening about the golden age.
Oh yeah, no, of
And
course.
what's your favorite parkour video?
Blitzden 5.
That's a good one.
I used to have it. I don't think I do anymore. My link in bio on Instagram used to be let me see if it's
I
still
thought
there.
you were going to say your LinkedIn bio was just Blitzdem 5.
Oh no, I don't have a link there anymore. No, but I used to have like a hidden link that was Blitzden 5. Like that video just connected with I've watched that so many times, and there's this iconic scene that is filmed. They must be on like a top of an old lamppost at IMAX, and it's Phil, Toby, and Callum like striding and vaulting across IMAX 2, and then Toby he gets the other end and he goes, and it's like core, just the sickest thing I've ever seen. Memory, like
Yeah.
so sick. And then there's
Toby
like
does
Tag,
the Kong speed step, right? I think on
yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
And Tag's like just roll. I think it actually might not be Tag. I can't remember. Somebody just rolling down the cliffs like hectically, like proper rage frugaling. Like it just like summed up that energy from back then. That I wasn't even that involved. I was really an outsider with those guys back then. But like, yeah, really fucking cool.
That's a great one. I do think there's probably a couple listeners who maybe are unfamiliar with Blitzdem 5. It's a little more of a deep cut at this point, although it was core memory for me too, right up there. I also always tell Callum that his summer video is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah. I mean, there's this just I can't even think which. There's just a number of like Callum Sash edits from back then that are they're just peak that era. Like
store summer. That's 2011. That was sort of when the transition to the Canon mirrorless era started happening, and people had actual slightly more cinema quality cameras.
This is a funny thing. This is a gripe, right? So maybe I just shouldn't say it because I've been so positive, but there's so many people in the scene who are like, half my age, who talk about like the nostalgia of when they got into parkour or early parkour videos, and then go out and film on like, skate handy cams, and they make these like gritty edits, and they would have grown up on like 550D polished sunset videos of Sasha and Toby doing that on rooftops and things. And it's like, that's not nostalgia. That is you just falling into like wanting to make this aesthetic of thing. But that's just me. I'm a cynical old man, so ignore me.
Well, I think there's definitely been and especially in America, and I talked about this in the Commons episode. I was laughing that a lot of there's like a certain vibe that a lot of those videos have that's a little bit more alt kid that doesn't resonate as much with me now with where I'm at in my life.
I struggle. Yeah.
But I also, laugh because I'm like, in the same way that has kind of feels like it's a general thematic quality of a lot of the current work from the UK scene, the Europe scene, and the American scene, of like the newer generation of practitioners, I look back and I'm like, well, the wanderlust vibe of every single video from 2011 to 2016. It's like you knew every video was going to have a sunset shot, somebody
Yeah,
on a
yeah, yeah,
rooftop
yeah,
doing that,
yeah.
and it's the same. It's just obviously
It's
a
the same,
different
just different.
character, and I do think that the in pop culture in general, right? There's like a big throwback to the night, like 90s are retro again, which
Yeah, yeah,
we're in
exactly.
the fun position of like for us growing up, it was like the 70s, and now we're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's the 90s now. It's 2 decades later. I guess that's how that works,
I'm
and
so curious.
we
Yeah, it's like,
remember
do
that
we
aesthetic.
in 20 years' time, does it just come around again? Because like I remember having like a beanie with flames on it and wristbands, and now that shit's cool again. And like,
Yep.
does that just
I
mean that from like a brand perspective, we can just start to just copy we know the timeline now, or does things change? I don't know. So
I mean, I do think that on a broad level, there is a certain amount of people looking at, yeah, it is sort of like 80s fashion, I
mm,
feel like was for a long time inspiring people, and then it's moved into 90s, and now we're
yeah,
getting into the early 2000s with especially like
yeah,
women's
yeah,
clothing and stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, we got to look and see what the knots and the early 2010s have to offer. Outside of parkour, to wrap
yep.
up, what would your media recommendation be?
Media,
Could
just
be
or
book,
video.
podcast, film, any type of media
Oh God.
that I know. Big question.
Favorite film, The Big Short. Not that
Okay.
you're asking specifically that, but The Big Short, I think, is my favorite film. Has been for a while. I've watched it numerous times. Um. Oh, favorite book. Not necessarily favorite book, but can I just spam some, right?
Yeah, just spam some.
Um, The E-Myth is an incredible book about sort of brand building, systemizing stuff like that. Really, really worth reading. Profit First by a guy called Mike McCowlitz, I think it is a book about basically just actually looking at running a business and making sure you are making profit instead of putting things like that in place. The Daily Dad, if you have Ryan Holiday, you got that?
I don't have it, but I've heard of it.
It's
I was
really,
just
really
checking my
nice.
bookcase. I'm like, do I have it? No, I don't
No,
have it.
it's just like, and Perennial Seller by Ryan Holiday is really good as well. But
Hmm.
Daily Dad for like it's just daily little dad things. It's really, really nice. Um, oh, I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, you
video.
just gave me four when I asked for one, so I feel like
Yeah,
you've hit my
sorry,
quota.
I can't do one. Like, there's podcasts that I could recommend. There's videos. I watch a lot of archery videos because I'm trying to get into archery. So I
You did bring up when I asked you what you wanted to chat about. You're like, we can go into deep dive into archery, but
mate,
we'll
I
save
love
that
it.
for the next one.
I love
After
it. Sorry, I
after
probably
this
dry.
after the store doc drops, I said we can touch base
Yeah,
again. Talk about,
yeah, yeah,
instead of
yeah.
talking about the film, we'll just talk about archery.
That sounds perfect because I'm not involved with the film at all. So I'm not actually. No, I am
Oh,
in it for a brief second, but yeah,
there's a little cameo. Well, thank
yeah.
you for taking
I
the time.
I think Bay cut me. So that's what I last heard is that he cut me out. So we'll see. But
Oh man.
yeah.
Damn.
Um,
Well, you get the honor of being the longest episode of the
I'm so
Takeoff so
sorry.
far.
It's because and probably no one's gonna make it through all that ramble about ecom stuff. So
I hope that they do, because I do think it was valuable, and I knew having you on that we are gonna do a deep dive, and that is exactly what I wanted to
I
talk to you about.
surprise myself sometimes with how much I can ramble about that stuff, and I suddenly go, "Oh, I do actually know a fair bit." Like, so yeah. But
Well, thank you
anyway,
so much for being on, Giles.
no,
I really
thank you.
appreciate you taking the time. That was Giles, everybody. What a great conversation, and really, at times, very detailed, which I love, again, as a big parkour nerd, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. I think there were some really, really good takeaways. If you're looking to expand or solidify your business, Giles to me is one of the best people to look for, because he has succeeded and failed. And I think that in parkour, a lot of times it's easy to look at failure as like a personal responsibility type thing. With COVID, we saw that a lot of the best businesses were unable to, deal with the additional burden beyond just being in a sort of small, growing sport that the outside world sometimes imposes. And I think Giles has learned a lot of lessons on how to not disaster proof a business, but how to forecast what you can do as a business owner or creative in the parkour space to protect yourself a little bit more from those unforeseen variables. And I at least had a couple of really strong takeaways from that as both, being adjacent to parkour business and just someone who's invested in the success of the sport and the industry as a whole. So thanks as always for listening. Very excited to hear your thoughts on this episode. Please leave a comment. I would really love to hear your thoughts on this. And if you have other guests that you'd like to hear, please let me know. As always, follow the Takeoff Pod on Instagram too. I've been recently dropping some more short form content there, so I don't just spam everybody here on my personal YouTube. So if you like the little sound bites and 45-second clips, check out the takeoff.pod on Instagram and you'll get some of those there. We'll see you next week.